This is not a joke, they are fighting over you. Someone said you are. My beloved child, listen closely, because what I'm about to reveal isn't noise, rumor, or some dramatic exaggeration. This is the moment everything around you has started cracking. The world you thought was silent behind your back is, right now, roaring with tension. Two people you never expected, are standing on opposite sides of a line drawn in fire, and they're fighting over you. Not playfully. Not jokingly. Not as a game. They're fighting because someone whispered something about you, something powerful enough to turn calm hearts into storms. And the crazy part? You weren't supposed to know. You weren't supposed to hear how your name became the spark that pushed them to the edge. But here you are, standing in the shadows of a truth you never asked for, watching the ground shake beneath the weight of the question everyone is suddenly terrified to answer. What exactly did someone say about you? Because that one sentence, dropped like a bomb, has changed the rhythm of everything around you. And as their voices rise, their tempers flare, and their eyes lock like warriors preparing for a war, there's one thing they keep repeating, a thing you're about to hear for the first time. But before I tell you what that sentence was, you need to understand the level of chaos unfolding behind the curtain. The tension isn't small, it's the kind that spreads like wildfire through every relationship, picking up speed, burning away every lie and leaving only raw truth behind. These two aren't fighting for attention, ego, or pride, they're fighting because the line between losing you and winning you suddenly became thin enough to break with a whisper. And the whisper was brutal. Someone said you are the one thing they feared the most, someone who can walk into their life without warning and change everything they thought they knew. Someone said you're the person they can't replace, can't ignore, can't forget, no matter how hard they try. And the moment those words spilled out, the air froze. One took a step forward. The other clenched their fists. And then the arguments, the accusations, the truth-twisting began. All for you. All because of you. And while they were locked in a battle of words, the person who started this, the one who said that line, stood still, watching the fire they set grow bigger than they imagined. They didn't think their statement would start a war. They didn't think it would push people to expose emotions they've buried for years. But it did. And now there's no stopping the wave that's rushing straight toward you. Everything that's happening is connected to a single moment, a moment you weren't even present for. A moment where someone leaned in, lowered their voice, and said something so piercing that even the strongest heart would shake. They said you're the person they can't compare, the person who carries a power that none of them can understand, the person who leaves a mark deeper than presence, deeper than history. That sentence shook them. It broke something in both of them. Because suddenly, they weren't just dealing with a rumor, they were dealing with the truth they've been running from, that you matter more than they ever admitted out loud. And now the air is sharp, their voices are rising, and the fear of losing you is making them reveal their real selves, their jealousy, their desperation, their unspoken attachment. And as they stand face to face, neither willing to back down, neither willing to walk away, there's a silence waiting to be broken, a truth waiting to be spoken, and a storm waiting for you to witness. Because the next thing they're about to say, is the real reason they're fighting over you. And once you hear it, nothing between you and them will ever feel the same again. My beloved child, the moment their voices collided, something shifted in the air, like destiny itself stepped forward to listen. You won't believe how fast the room changed. 1 second it was silent, the next it felt like a storm cracked open between them. Their emotions weren't soft, controlled, or hidden anymore. They were raw, loud, and trembling with a truth they've both tried to bury for too long. And in the middle of this chaos, one of them finally snapped. With eyes burning and voice shaking, they said that the person who started this, the one who dared to speak about you, wasn't lying at all. They said the words everyone else was too scared to admit, words that made the entire atmosphere tighten. You don't understand, this person means more to me than anything I've ever fought for. And as soon as those words dropped, the floor beneath everyone felt like it cracked open. Because this wasn't anger anymore. This was fear. Fear of losing you. Fear of the truth coming out. Fear of watching someone else take the place they wished they had in your life. What they said next. That was the moment everything stopped breathing, but the other one didn't step back, not even for a second. Instead, they moved closer, voice low but shaking like a volcano preparing to erupt. They said they'd been waiting for this moment, waiting for the truth to break out from the shadows. They admitted that the rumor wasn't a rumor, it was the reality they've been hiding. Someone said you're irreplaceable. Someone said you're the type of person who walks into someone's life and changes it so deeply that going back becomes impossible. And those words weren't just statements, they were confessions disguised as accusations. Their emotions didn't slip out accidentally, they exploded out like truths that had been trapped behind walls for years. And right when one of them tried to explain what you truly mean to them, the other cut in, voice trembling, eyes burning, and told them they'd never understand how long they've been carrying this feeling, how much of themselves they've poured into you silently. They said everything that's happening right now, every fight, every argument, every crack in their voice, is because you are the one they're terrified to lose. And just when it seemed like the storm was calming, a new shock dropped, one you weren't ready for. Because right then, the person who caused all of this, the one who said that line about you, took a slow breath and revealed the part they had kept hidden. They said the reason they spoke that truth wasn't to start a fight, it was to expose something both of them were too scared to face. They said the real reason these two are fighting isn't jealousy, ego, or pride, it's because both of them know, deep down, that you carry something they can't compete with. They said you're the kind of person who doesn't just enter someone's life, you change its direction. You shift its meaning. You awaken emotions that were buried under years of silence. And now that the truth is out, neither of them is willing to step aside. Because someone said you are the one person whose presence can rewrite someone's entire world, and those words hit them harder than any punch could. That's why they're fighting. That's why they're breaking. And that's why the next thing they're about to confess will shake everything even more than the fight itself. My beloved child, the silence that followed their outburst wasn't normal. It wasn't calm, it wasn't peaceful, it was the kind of silence that comes right before a truth that can destroy every lie ever spoken. Both of them stood still, breathing heavy, eyes locked like they were staring into each other's souls, trying to figure out who would dare speak the next confession. And then, it happened. One of them finally broke. Their voice dropped to a whisper, the kind that carries more weight than a scream. They said the words they'd been choking on for years: "You don't get it. I didn't just fight today. I've been fighting for them long before you even realized what they meant to you." Those words didn't just cut through the room, they carved straight into the air like lightning. Because this wasn't about jealousy anymore, it was about years of silent feelings, years of holding on, years of pretending they didn't care when you walked away, when you laughed with someone else, when you trusted someone more than them. And as that confession spilled out, you could feel the whole space freeze. Because the other one, they understood exactly what those words meant. And they weren't ready to back down, not even now. The second person stepped forward slowly, and for the first time, their voice wasn't angry, it was vulnerable. They said they knew, every single day, that they weren't the only one trying to protect you, trying to reach you, trying to keep you close even when you drifted far. But then they dropped the sentence that changed everything. They said, "But you still don't understand why I'm fighting for them today. You think it's just feelings?" No. Someone said something about them, something that shook me to the core. And that's when the room felt like it stopped breathing. Because this wasn't just about love, affection, or emotional attachment. This was about something deeper. Something they heard that terrified them. Something they believed could take you away from both of them in a heartbeat. They looked the other person straight in the eyes and said that the line someone whispered wasn't simple, it was a warning. A warning that the person in the middle of all of this, you, were starting to slip away. Not because you wanted to leave, not because you didn't care, but because you'd been hurt so many times that you were building a wall so high neither of them could reach you anymore. And that realization, that fear, that truth, was the real reason they were fighting so desperately. But the moment that truth hit the air, the person who caused all this, the one who whispered that line about you, finally stepped forward. They weren't angry. They weren't emotional. They were calm, almost too calm. They said they never meant to start a war. They only wanted to expose the truth both of them were trying to hide. They said the real reason they told everyone that someone like you can't be taken for granted, isn't because you're leaving, or drifting, or disappearing, but because people like you don't come twice in a lifetime. They said you're the kind of person whose presence stays with someone forever, whether you stay or walk away. The kind of person whose absence hurts more than heartbreak. The kind of person whose silence is louder than someone else's love. And when those words settled, both fighters stopped arguing. Because deep down, they knew it was true. They weren't fighting because they hated each other. They were fighting because they were scared of the same thing. Scared of losing the one person who makes their world feel alive. Scared of watching someone else stand where they wished they stood. Scared of the way their heart collapses at the thought of you choosing someone else. And for the first time, both of them finally realized, this fight wasn't about who wins you. It was about whether either of them even deserves you. My beloved child, the air felt heavier than ever before, as if the room itself understood that whatever came next would change everything. Both of them stood there, exhausted, shaken, stripped of every mask they ever wore, yet neither of them could walk away. Because the truth they were circling around wasn't small, wasn't simple, wasn't just emotional, it was destiny-level personal. And right when it felt like the tension might finally settle, one of them took a slow breath and said something that stopped every heartbeat in the room. If people out there only knew what this person means, they'd be telling the entire world about them. And that hit hard. Because for the first time, it wasn't about their fight, it was about your worth. The person speaking wasn't defending themselves anymore, they were defending you. They said your story, your heart, your loyalty, your existence deserves to be heard by more people than just them. They said if others truly understood how deep your impact runs, they'd share your journey, your voice, your presence with everyone around them. They'd want the world to know the person who changed theirs. And in that moment, a strange quiet confidence filled the room, because the truth was finally touching the surface. Your life isn't something meant to be hidden. Your value isn't something meant to be whispered. Your presence deserves to be seen, noticed, remembered, carried forward. The second person, still trembling but no longer angry, stepped closer, their voice soft but overflowing with intensity. They said that if there was ever a story worth talking about, worth spreading, worth letting others experience, it was yours. And the more they spoke, the more their emotions cracked through their voice. They said people need to hear what's happening here, not for drama, not for chaos, but because your journey teaches something rare, how one person's existence can move mountains inside hearts that once refused to feel anything at all. They said the world deserves to know how someone like you can change the direction of someone's life without even trying. And then came the moment that tightened the atmosphere. You could feel the sincerity, the vulnerability, the confession hiding behind every word. They said this isn't just some fight happening in a corner of the world. This is a story worth being carried forward, worth being spoken aloud, worth being passed on to others who might see themselves in your strength. And quietly, without shouting, without force, they said anyone watching, anyone listening, would naturally want to spread this moment so others could feel what they're feeling right now. That's when the fight transformed, not into anger, not into fear, but into acknowledgement of your impact. Then, almost as if fate had been waiting for the perfect second, the one who began all of this, the whisperer, the trigger, the person who set the storm in motion, finally stepped forward again. Their voice wasn't shaky or uncertain. It was steady, calm, and filled with a truth none of the others had been brave enough to say. They said this story unfolding around you isn't something ordinary, it's something people would want to follow, revisit, and stay connected to. They said the weight of what's happening right now is the kind that makes people come back for more, the kind that makes them want to stay close, stay updated, stay present. Because your story isn't temporary, it's powerful enough to pull people in and make them feel like they're part of something bigger. And then, with a soft breath, they revealed the real reason they spoke up in the first place. Not to start a war, not to cause chaos, but because they believed your truth deserved to travel farther than just the walls of that room. They believed people would want to follow every chapter, every reveal, every emotion connected to you. And as the three of them stood there, one confessing, one protecting, one revealing, a quiet understanding fell over all of them. This isn't the end of the story. This is the moment the world begins to pay attention. This is the moment people lean in. This is the moment hearts connect to your journey. And somewhere deep inside, they all knew, the real revelation, the one that will shake everything, is still waiting ahead. My beloved child, the room didn't calm down after those confessions. If anything, it grew heavier, like the universe itself leaned closer to witness what none of them had the courage to face until now. Both of them looked shaken, not because of each other, but because of what they finally understood. The truth wasn't in the fight, the shouting, or the jealousy. The truth was in the fear that neither of them could hide anymore. And that's when one of them stepped forward, voice trembling with a truth they had buried for far too long. They said they weren't fighting because someone claimed you were important. They weren't fighting because of ego. They were fighting because someone dared to say you were slipping away. Someone told them that you had started locking parts of yourself behind walls no one could break. Someone said you were becoming unreachable, untouchable, distant. And hearing that shook them in ways they never expected. It terrified them. Because they realized that losing you wouldn't feel like losing a person, it would feel like losing their own heartbeat. And when they said this, the other one didn't argue. They didn't deny it. They didn't pretend. They simply lowered their head and whispered that they had felt the same shift, the same distance, the same fear. They admitted that every day you pull back even a little, their world tilts off balance. Because they both know something neither of them ever wanted to say out loud. You matter in a way that makes their whole life feel different. And for the first time, the fight wasn't about who gets you, it was about whether either of them has done enough to deserve you. But before the moment could settle, the one who started this entire storm, the whisperer, spoke again, and this time their voice held no hesitation. They said you weren't slipping away because of lack of love or lack of care. You weren't distancing yourself because you wanted to escape. They said the real reason was far deeper. Someone broke parts of you so quietly that even the people closest to you didn't notice the pieces falling. They said you learned to stand strong without telling anyone how much you were still healing inside. You learned to walk with your head held high while carrying burdens no one else could see. And the whisperer said something that made both fighters freeze. You're not slipping away. You're protecting yourself. Those words hit like a wave. Because suddenly, everything made sense. Your silence, your distance, your careful steps, your guarded heart. You weren't shutting people out. You were shielding yourself from pain you never deserved in the first place. They realized you weren't unreachable, you were scared of being hurt again. And hearing that truth didn't break them, it humbled them. For once, they weren't thinking about winning or losing. They were thinking about how deeply they may have failed to understand your battles. How they missed the signs. How they overlooked the quiet cries hidden behind your calmness. And for the first time, they both stepped back, not from each other, but from the noise inside themselves, because they knew this moment wasn't about their feelings, it was about what you've been carrying alone. Then the atmosphere shifted again, but this time it wasn't tension or anger, it was realization. The whisperer took a slow step toward them, voice steady, eyes sharp with clarity, and said the most powerful line yet. You're fighting to keep someone who has already fought the world alone, and you didn't even notice. And that sentence hit harder than the entire argument. Because suddenly, they saw the truth they had been blind to. You didn't need dramatic confessions, you needed someone who understood you. You didn't need people battling each other, you needed someone willing to stand beside you. You didn't need loud declarations, you needed quiet consistency. And the whisperer wasn't done. They said the reason they revealed that someone was talking about you wasn't to start chaos, it was to force these two to see what they had ignored: your strength, your pain, your resilience, your worth. They said the world sees you more clearly than the people who claim to care. And hearing that made both fighters step closer, not to attack each other, but because they suddenly understood that this moment wasn't about competition at all. It was about awakening. Awakening to the fact that you're not someone to be fought over, you're someone to be fought for. And as the realization spread across their faces, as the tension melted into responsibility, as the storm finally began to settle, one thing became painfully, powerfully clear: the biggest revelation of this story still hasn't been spoken, and when it finally comes, it will shatter everything they thought they knew about you, about each other, and about the truth that started this entire fire. My beloved child, the moment the weight of truth settled into their hearts, something inside both of them shifted. The fight they came with, the fire, the rage, the jealousy, it all began to dissolve into something far more unsettling: realization. And realization is always louder than shouting. Both of them stood there, breathing hard, eyes flickering with the truth they could no longer hide from themselves. They weren't just fighting each other, they were fighting their own guilt. They were fighting the fear that maybe, just maybe, they had failed you in ways they never noticed. And right then, one of them finally spoke, voice softer than it had been all day. They said they wished they had known sooner. They wished they'd seen the silent battles you fought when no one was watching. They wished they had understood the pain you buried beneath your strength. And with a trembling breath, they admitted something that shattered whatever tension was left in the room: I wasn't fighting them. I was fighting myself for not being there for you when you needed someone the most. Those words didn't spark anger, they sparked silence. A silence so deep, everyone felt it. The other person, who had been burning with emotion moments ago, suddenly looked like the weight of every mistake was pressing down on their chest. They said they always thought you were strong enough to handle everything alone. They thought your silence meant peace, not protection. They never realized you were carrying wounds that were never meant to be carried alone. And then came the confession that shook even the whisperer, the one who caused this storm in the first place. They said they were scared. Scared not of losing you to someone else, but scared of losing you to the battles you never talked about. Scared that one day you'd disappear behind your walls so deeply that no one could reach you, not out of anger, not out of rejection, but out of exhaustion. They admitted that the whispered truth, the one that started this fire, came from a place of fear, not malice. Someone said you were drifting, not because you didn't care, but because you were tired of being strong in silence. And hearing that truth broke something inside both of them. Because suddenly, the fight wasn't about who loved you more. It was about who understood you too late. Then the whisperer stepped forward again, and their voice carried a quiet power that filled the entire space. They said the world looks at you and sees someone unbreakable, but they were the only one who saw the cracks forming beneath your calmness. They said people often fall for your strength, but they forget to ask what it costs you to stay strong. They forget that even the strongest fall asleep some nights feeling empty. And while the two fought over you, the whisperer confessed the one truth no one else saw: you've been carrying everything alone because you didn't want to burden anyone. But the truth is, you were the one who needed someone to fight for you. And those words, they didn't ignite fire, they melted it. Both of them looked shaken, almost defeated, not because they lost the fight, but because they realized they never understood the depth of your quiet pain. They finally saw it, the exhaustion behind your smile, the distance in your eyes, the bravery in your silence. But the whisperer wasn't finished. They stepped closer and revealed something even deeper, something neither of them had ever considered. They said the real reason the world talks about you, the real reason people fight over you, the real reason someone whispered those shocking words, is because you have no idea how much impact you've left on others. They said your presence stays long after you walk away. Your absence echoes loudly in people's hearts. Your silence makes people think. Your kindness rewrites someone's entire understanding of love. And that's why people fight, for the chance to be close to someone who changes them without even trying. The room fell silent again, not with tension this time, but with a kind of realization that felt almost spiritual. The fighters finally understood why the whisperer spoke up, why the truth had to be exposed, why this moment had to happen. Because your story, your presence, your value, is something so rare that even those who love you don't fully understand it until they're forced to face it head-on. And yet, even after all this, the whisperer said one more thing, something that sent a shiver through the room: there's still one truth none of you have heard yet. And when you do, everything you think you know about this fight, about each other, and about them, will change forever.